And welcome to this week's IG Live. Happy Black History Month. Today I am so excited to be talking to Kobina Commeh, who just had a new book come out. It's beautiful. It's all about a little boy who's learning how to swim and the support he gets from his grandmother. But it's kind of, on one hand, it seems like a very simple story, but it actually incorporates a lot of elements of West African culture and traditions, specifically from Ghana, and also talks about history of segregation and why there can be a lot of fear of the water. But it also, you can read it on another level as just a really sweet story about a boy overcoming his fear of swimming. So very excited to talk to him today. Hello. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Hold on just a minute. We do this every week on Thursdays at 2 o'clock Eastern, although watch for our announcements in case sometimes we have to adjust that to accommodate our guests. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good to see you again.
Great hearing from you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I was just giving a little bit of an introduction to your book, which we're going to talk about today. I've really been enjoying it. But why don't we start off and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming an author.
Oh, great. Yeah, my name's Kobina. I go by Kobe. It's been a long journey, about 10 years. 10 years of submissions, rejections. I think just over time, I've learned that if you want to be successful at something, you kind of have to immerse yourself into that world. And so I started being more active. I joined, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I joined Authors Guild. I joined Black Creators HQ. Just becoming more active was helpful instead of just sitting at home and writing stories and not sending them out. So that's been the journey.
Oh, I love it. And I appreciate that you talk about how it was a long journey, because I think sometimes people see, here you are with this beautiful book and they think, oh, well, it must have just happened so naturally and so easily for them. And sometimes they can get frustrated if they aren't able to do that. So I appreciate you talking about that.
Yeah, and listen, it was the first time I thought I was going to be published. I was 10 years old. I was in Ghana and I saw a 12-year-old was published, and I said, that's going to be me in a couple of years. And look at me now at 44.
I love it. That's great, but it's great that you persisted. I mean, through all those years. That's wonderful. And I do want to talk about the fact that your day job is as a foot doctor, and if people have not seen your biography that you write of yourself, it's so
Yeah,
funny. I mean, these really wonderfully terrible puns
yeah.
about the fact that your first book is being published by Barefoot Books.
Happy coincidence. I don't know how that happened.
But I'm curious because, it seems like your day job is so different from being a writer. Is there something you have to kind of do to help you switch gears when you sit down and say, okay, now I'm going to write?
Uh, that's a good question. It's very difficult to switch gears. I mean, I'm in that field because I love helping people in any capacity. So I feel like writing is also very helpful. However, they are different. And so what I realize is I have to, when I get an idea, I have to write it down.
Mm.
And so I tell people you can use apps. I actually have I have this tiny little book that I have in my coat pocket. If I have any idea, I'll write it. And I started from larger books, and I realized it wasn't going to work out. And so it's helpful for me to kind of write on the go, so to speak. If I'm running, I usually get pretty euphoric, and every idea is great when I'm running, right? And then so I jot down all these ideas, and then later coalesce them in a writing app called Scrivener. Yeah.
Mm.
So I wish I was more disciplined. I know people that wake up at 5 in the morning and write every morning, and that's my goal.
Well, what is your process like when you write? Because I also know, you have young children and here you have a day job. So how do you find time to write?
I do it when they go to sleep,
Mm.
and I write in my head all the time. As
I like.
we're talking, I'm writing.
Uh, I love that. So now you do have your debut book, which is, I hope I'm saying this right, Kwesi and Ruby learn to swim. So tell us about your book and what the inspiration for it was.
My
I'll,
daughters,
I'll show some pictures while you're doing
yeah,
that.
thank you. Yeah, my daughters, they're Maya and Ella. They're 10 and 9 now. We always, my wife was a swimmer, and she wanted them to learn how to swim. So I would do daddy and me classes with them at the YMCA, and not knowing how to swim at the time. And as they grew, I just noticed that they just got so much better, and they're very courageous. And one of the reasons why I decided to really learn was because when they were 6 and 4, we went to the YMCA, and it was a deeper pool because
Mhm.
we had learned at the 3 foot side,
Right.
and the 9 foot side they had to do a swim test. So this little body, the 6-year-old plopped in, swam all the way across, and the next week the 4-year-old wanted to do the same thing, and I'm just like, do you know how deep that is? I didn't say anything, but and I put that on Instagram because I was just amazed, and that really gave me the courage to keep pushing because I tried a couple of times and stopped lessons. And so when I saw her do it, I did have nightmares. It was scary. I got up at 5 in the morning to make it to the YMCA at 5:30. It was safe. The lifeguard was there. I had taken lessons. People were swimming next to me. I kind of snuck into the deep end, and I just booked it all the way across, just splashing everywhere. And I made it. And that wasn't the end of the journey, but it gave me the confidence that I wasn't going to sink all the way to the bottom.
I love that. And I love how you took this kind of scary parenting moment and turned it into something, part of your own personal journey. And again, talking about that persistence, you didn't let the fear stop you, that you kept on
Yes.
going. Um,
It did stop me for many decades, though. So
right.
I want people to feel that it's okay. Let it happen when it's time.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. And like I said, so you've talked about your own journey. I mean, this is something you shared about a lot on your Instagram, about your own journey learning how to swim, overcoming your fear of water. And in the book, the grandmother, Nana Ruby, talks about to Kwesi, her grandson, why this is so prevalent among people of African descent. And you and I were able to chat about this earlier also, that she talks about segregation, not being allowed to be in public pools. And so people weren't learning how to swim, and they kind of passed that fear on. Why is it so important for kids to understand this history? Because, and I want people to know, this is a picture book, and it's not, this is not a lot of text. If you're going to be reading this with younger children,
Yeah.
it's not a complicated story, and yet you incorporate so much into it and this history. Why was it important to you to include in the book?
Yeah, and thank you. I had lots of help. When I initially wrote the manuscript, I just want kids to know, because they are the future, right? I want them to know that Black history is American history. And, number one, shouldn't be relegated to just, the learning shouldn't be relegated to 1 month out
Right.
of the year. But I felt like it was important for them to know, and Christina and Ruby learned to swim, to touch on the fact that segregation did sever the knowledge of the passing down of the knowledge of swimming for generations. West Africans were were and are great swimmers. Surfers back in the 1600s in Ghana that I researched and learned about. And so through the transatlantic slave trade, all that knowledge was severed. And then segregation happened. And so 70% of Black people, myself included, about 4 years ago, do not know how to swim.
Mm.
And that's the reason.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is really cool about this is that on the one hand, you're talking about why that passing down the knowledge is severed, and then she repairs that, because when Nana Ruby is telling him about this history, but then she also reconnects him to that
Yes.
tradition uh, of the Mami Wata. And maybe can you tell us a little bit about her and kind of the role she plays in this
Yes.
story?
I mean, she's the protector of the oceans. She's the what is she? She's the protector. She's the nurturer. Water represents rejuvenation, rebirth, and that's what I felt like being reconnected with the water. And so I like mythology, and I think it's important for everyone to know about the different types of mythology because they all borrow from each other. And Mami Wata is one of those. Anything with mysticism I love, and so it was going to be in a
And
book, in any book I write. Yeah.
I mean, because when she's telling about this, it's like this very kind of comforting, like, don't worry, if you're in the water, she's going to help you. Do you feel like reconnecting kids to these traditions can be very empowering.
Yes, and it roots them in something that was before them.
Mm,
One of the things about mythology or the passing down of knowledge for Africans is the adinkra symbols, which Bárbara, we got to mention Bárbara. I mean, I wrote the words, but Bárbara just, she illuminated the book. We
right.
got to give her credit.
Mm.
This book wouldn't be what it is without her. And Autumn too, she was my editor. She challenged me in different ways to, she loved the manuscript right off the bat. I feel like she was more excited, Autumn Allen, she was more excited than I was about the book. And so, yeah, incorporating all of those things, the African mythology is super important. So the Adinkra symbols are knowledge that are passed down, and so one of them is called Sankofa, which means you look back in order to see what happened, in order to move forward in the future, in the best way possible.
And that's a perfect way to describe your book too. And I just wanted to show people that at the back of the book there is, you have the author's note, glossary, and more information about naming practices. So there's a lot incorporated into this story. So, if kids want to dive deeper, especially older kids can also appreciate it because they can kind of go a little further into
Yeah.
it if they want.
Yeah, and one thing is the day names. Kids can have a fun game where they pick their day names. Because I'm Kobina, so there's a bunch of Kobinas, right? Born on Tuesday, and they can have fun picking their day names. And I actually didn't know until I did the research that my name was connected with the ocean.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was looking because I had heard of day names before, but I didn't realize that they had an additional meaning to it. And the fact that yours is ocean is
And
just so
that's something
yeah, it's
I had
amazing.
no idea. That was all in research.
Well, and so talking about connecting to the past, I know you talked about that in a lot of the ways this book helped you process kind of the passing of your own grandmother, and
Yes.
also just the fact that because of the distance, that your kids didn't have, that you wanted to make sure that they stay connected to her and to her memory and to the culture. Um, and I was just thinking about the role of storytelling. Why is storytelling in particular such a great way to kind of strengthen these connections, process our emotions, and that sort of thing?
I believe everyone is a creator. You and I are creating this content right now. Everybody creates in their own way. Information comes in and we process it, and people hear different things. It's amazing.
Mm.
So I think everybody is a writer and a creator of some form. For me, it's helpful because of things that I've been through is to actually write it down. And sometimes I remove myself by making it a different character, different name, different situations. But it's really cathartic for me, and I think everybody should. I never journaled, and I guess this is my way of journaling.
Yeah, that's very interesting because it seems like it would be kind of a similar process,
Hmm.
like you said, write down, kind of process those emotions. Um, to go back to this particular story, I know you've said it's also about learning how to accept help. So
Yes.
what do you want kids to take away from this book when they read it?
To stay curious, always ask questions, and just seek help. You don't know who's in your family, friend circle that's going through the same thing that you're going through. And in this case with Kwesi, it was his grandmother, and he was shocked because she is so old that she didn't know this seemingly very basic thing. It's, learning how to swim is an essential life skill,
Mhm.
and I feel like everybody should know it at any age.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was something kind of interesting in the story. So, like you said, he's learning how to swim, and then he finds out his grandmother doesn't know how to swim. And so, in a way, I think that's also kind of a cue for us as adults reading this, that sometimes I think we have to not show our weaknesses or our vulnerabilities to our children, that somehow we need them to see us as strong. But how do you think it helped him when he found that out? Like what kind of, how do you think that maybe a lesson that we as adults can take away from that?
When I was writing it, if you notice, the first time she noticed that Nana Ruby noticed something was going on, Kwesi, she didn't say anything,
Mm,
right? So she gave it a couple. She gave him a couple of chances to come forth
mm,
with the information and then be vulnerable herself. And so I think it's good to, what I've learned with my daughters is to just be quiet and to listen and to see what comes out of it. You know, when they're going to bed, I hold them and it's dark, and my youngest one usually tells me things. She has very interesting questions at that time. And to not always pepper them with questions because they tend to shut down. Like imagine if somebody's just asking you 20 questions at once.
Mm.
So I feel like as parents, adults, we can learn from this story of just being patient and vulnerable.
I like that. And my kids are a little bit older. I have a teenager, but that's very good advice for that age as well, to know when to
Oh,
not keep asking questions and let them talk. It can be kind of hard, as a parent to have that patience,
hmm
And I know you said that your daughters were a big inspiration for you to get back into writing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, my little one. So we try not to do a lot of screens, and so it's just tons and tons of books, and I get what I ask for because they raid the library,
Mm.
probably 50 to 60 books at a time, and I'm not kidding. We were
Well,
just there yesterday, and so that kind of motivated me to write again, but also I wanted them to see themselves in stories.
mm.
So who better to create those stories than me, their dad, and then hopefully they also can. And their grandmother is a children's book writer, and she took a break over the years, but now she's back at it. And so I think it's important for them to see that and to know that everyone's a creator. It's just a matter of actually creating the content and sending it out. You can keep it to yourself, which is great. That's also good. And whenever it's ready to be born, you can put it out there in terms of submissions, querying publishers, agents, and things like that.
I love it. So they have a father and a grandmother who are children's book authors. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and now you have this beautiful book, and I would love to know what else. Can you tell us anything else about upcoming projects? Do you have anything in
Um,
the works?
I do. I have four manuscripts. I would love to have an agent. I represented myself with Barefoot Books, and the Authors Guild was actually helpful if you want to represent yourself because they have that lawyers that could look at the contract. And so I have four manuscripts. I think they're great. They haven't been accepted yet, and so I think I'll keep submitting them. And they're projects that I'm excited about.
Are they also picture books?
They are. You know, my goal was to write with them as they grew,
Mm.
and they're kind of growing very fast, and so I'm
You
behind.
need to
So
hurry up on the middle grade. Just
yeah, I have four or five picture book manuscripts and that completed, and I'm working on finishing the middle grade.
Oh, so you do have a middle grade one
I
also. Oh,
do.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah. So was that process, has that been very different for you than writing the picture book? Was that hard to kind of switch to that, or was that fun to have a little more space to develop the
So
story?
here's the story. I thought writing picture books would be easy.
Mhm.
And in some ways it is because I can get it down on paper quickly. But
Mhm.
then I realize I have 1,000 words and it needs to be whittled down to about 500 to 700. And that process is very difficult. It's learning, it's like swimming or riding a bike or, getting on a freeway in a car for the first time. It's something to get used to and you just practice it over and over again because it is a rhythm with kids'
Mhm.
books, and you do have to write it where they can grasp the information,
Right.
and they won't grasp everything. There are things in Kwesi and Ruby Learn to Swim that only adults would understand,
Right.
and when the kid is curious, you kind of they can ask more questions.
Mhm.
But I love the children's books genre. I would be a children's book writer for life.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I hope so. Judging from by your first book, I hope that is going to be true. So,
Thank
congratulations on
you.
coming out and everything to come. And thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Yes. Thank you for reaching out to me. That was amazing
Yes.
when you did.
Well, I'm so glad it worked out because this is such a pleasure. And anybody who's joining us, if you're joining us late, this will be up in just a few minutes on Instagram, so you can watch the whole thing, or if you prefer, you can watch it later on our YouTube
Yeah.
channel. So thanks to everybody who joined us, and thank you, Kobe, for talking with us today.
Thank you.
All right,
All right.
bye, everybody.